Hello people of the VC, and welcome to part 4 of my Music for Nations vinyl collection video. This time I will show you what I have between catalogues 61 and 80. Just as a quick recap, Music for Nations released 100 albums between 1983 and 1989, and the 80s metal is the genre that I collect the most, so I thought it'd be fun to see how many of those 100 I can get. Again, I'm not collecting these religiously. I pick them up when I can find them. Certainly the ones that aren't very good, I'll only pick up if I see them cheap. I'm not going to bust a gut to get some of these, but I just thought it'd be cool if I got them all at some point. I'd say in no rush to get them all, but I've got enough so far that's justified me putting this series together. So we're in sort of 1986-87 now, an absolute fantastic time for heavy metal, and this part 4 of 5 is it just contains some amazing albums and possibly going to be my favourite part of this series. So without further ado, let me jump in. Check out the other videos. I'll leave a link to a playlist above if you haven't seen them already, and yeah, let's get into it. So the first one would be Music for Nations number 61, MFN61, and that's Exciter unveiling The Wicked, but I don't have that one. That's one I'm on the lookout, and it's getting a little bit harder to find, but definitely one I want to add to the collection. MFN62 is Anthrax, Spreading the Disease. Now I've actually got 3 copies of this one, and they're all subtly different. I hadn't really planned on buying different versions of this, and I certainly wouldn't do that with a lot of albums in the Music for Nations catalogue, but Spreading the Disease happens to be one of my favourite albums of all time, and every time I see it I will pick it up, and if I see it cheap auction on eBay I'll bid on it, and I've picked up 3 copies so far. This is the first copy I owned. It's not in the best shape cover and vinyl wise, but it was also the first record I ever bought on Discogs. We're looking at about 4 years ago now, and I wasn't really sure of the grading system, so I wanted to buy something cheap and something I wanted, and I would use that as a comparison. So this was advertised as VG, and with experience it is VG. It only actually cost me £3. If you look on Discogs now, 4 years later, a VG copy of Spreading the Disease by Anthrax goes for probably around £10 to £12. So it just shows how much second-hand, certainly classic albums, has ballooned over the last 4 years. Probably worth more than gold. So this is, as you can see, we've got the flag bearer up here now, and MFN 62. This is what, a 1985 release actually. Just notice down here in the corner, so it was published under Island, and it has the Island logo down here. Not significant for this album, but for next one I'm actually going to show has some bearing on that. The inner sleeve, lyrics, and the Charlie Bellante picture on the back. And the label, we're actually back to the classic Music for Nations label here. You might remember in the end of the last video when I showed Master of Puppets by Metallica, I mentioned that was the start of the Swayze era. But I was a bit discombobulated because I also said that I realised in researching that last video that I didn't have a first pressing, and I ended up with a subsequent 1986 pressing which had the new Swayze label. So we're back to the original label for now. So yeah, the next copy I've got, I picked up more recently, and the cover is a lot cleaner and is in much better shape. Cost me a bit more as a result, but notice the difference here. Now this is a first pressing. The matrix, everything on the record itself is the same as the last one I showed you. The matrix and everything that run out, but it doesn't have the Island logo in the bottom left, and that is the only difference I can see across the inner sleeve and the record itself. So this version isn't listed on Discogs. I was kind of concerned initially that it might be a counterfeit, like I found out my Metallica Kill 'Em All was a counterfeit, because the label is actually quite bright and clean, but I just think it's just a clean copy. Again, the matrix runouts, the text in there is identical, absolutely identical to the other first pressing I have. So I'm pretty sure the record's legit. It just seems to be a different cover that isn't documented yet on Discogs. As you can see here, these labels, or maybe you can't see, these labels always have made in France on them, even though they're classified as UK releases. And the third copy I've got is also an 86 release, but it's a later release, and you can tell that because it has the Swayze label. We're back to Patrick Swayze, and this is the last time I'm going to show a record with this label on, unless there's some particular customization, because otherwise they're all the same. They will have the same font on them. But again, that has the same matrix run out. It doesn't appear to be a different pressing, it just seems to be a different label, and the cover is exactly the same, and we also have the Island licensing logo in the bottom left as well. This one's in a little bit more of a beat up shape, which is a shame, because I got this on eBay fairly recently, and the seller had listed it as excellent, but he failed to mention the illegible spine, a split seam up here, which I've subsequently fixed, so you don't notice. Actually, I did a good job on that. Very proud of myself. And yeah, and the record's got a couple of scratches as well, so I'm currently in negotiation with him about getting a little bit of a refund on that one. I don't want a full refund. I'm happy to pay, I know what it's worth, but it's not worth what I paid for it. So yeah, that's MFN62 with Anthrax. MFN63 is the next compilation album in the label collection. This is Mad Tracks 2, Beyond the Metal Zone. We had Mad Tracks in the last episode. Now we've lost the flag bearer. We're up to a change in logo on the back with just the straight Music for Nations text, but here we have the MFN63. I think this is the first official pressing that has the old Swayze label, but I may be wrong. Yeah, so Gatefold, it's a double album. These are the albums that this compilation album takes tracks from. So we've got Surgeon, Sabotage, Tigers of Pangtang, Legs Diamond, Metallica, Baby Taku, Eric Martin, Wasted, Robin Trower, Exciter, Rio, Thrasher, Sugar Creek, and Legs Diamond. Pretty cool comp, like that one. Next up, MFN64 is the second and last album that Q5 produced in the 80s. And I do love this cover with a guy, he's watching TV with Stroke cigarettes, Footmaster boots, Scores beer, and Climax watches, while obviously watching with drinking his Scores beer, with his Climax watch, his Strokes cigarettes, and his Footmaster boots on as well. I love that cover, but I don't really love the album. There's a great tash on Floyd here. After Q5 Steal the Light, this is a real disappointment, because they've added a lot more keyboards. They've tried to get themselves a lot more commercial sounding, and I don't think it really worked. I was lucky enough to see Q5 a month or two ago now, and they played tracks off this album, and they were unrecognisable because they didn't have a keyboard player on stage with them, and they played them, I think, as they were meant to be heard, and they were absolutely superb. So glad to have this in the collection. Of course I've got it because it's the Music for Nations, and here we have again the Music for Nations logo top right with the MFN64. Cool. And the inner sleeve for that one. Now, the only remaining members we have, I think, are Jonathan Kay and Evan Sheely. They both look very different these days. But old Jonathan Kay still has a set of pipes on him. And the lyrics as well. So that's Q5, When the Mirror Cracks, MFN64. MFN65 is another Gap. It's an AOR album by Rio called Sex Crimes. Not in a hurry to find that one at all. If I saw it cheap, I'd pick it up, but I'm not going to go out of my way to look for that one. Number 66, MFN66, is a recent acquisition, and that's Agent Steel, Unstoppable Force. Absolutely superb album, speed metal. I heard some people call them thrash, but I think it's good old-fashioned speed metal. Here we have a black and white MF Music for Nations logo and a big MFN66. You see the track listing there. This one's talking points, I guess, are the so on the back you see the band listing, but on the back cover they spell the names wrongly. So Versailles and Cirrus, I'm probably butchering those names. They're spelt correctly on the credits for the songs in here, but they've spelt them wrongly on the back. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little misdemeanor on the cover there. Oh, and I think yeah, the track 2 side 4 Traveller is spelt or misspelt, but it's spelt correctly as far as I'm concerned, because it's the English spelling with 2 L's and has the American spelling there on the cover. So a lapse in quality control there, Music for Nations. Sort yourselves out. Lyric inner sleeve and credits on there. Nice thick card inner sleeve, not like a lot of the earlier MFN releases that were fairly plain. MFN67 is a hard rock band from the UK called The Creek with their self-titled album. Again, I don't have that one. I listened to a bit of a sample and it sounds quite good, so if I do see that one, I'll definitely pick that up. So we'll go straight on to Music for Nations number 68, and that's the second album from Rogue Male, Animal Man. Certainly glammed themselves up a little bit since the last release. Here we have the Music for Nations and MFN68. Good album. Not as good as the first album, I don't think, but pretty solid heavy metal album all the same. MFN68. Oh yeah, sorry. Inner sleeve. Look at that. Look at those shoulder pads. Superb stuff. And lyrics. MFN69 is an album I probably would never have owned had it not been on Music for Nations. One that I would probably never have listened to had it not been on Music for Nations. But at the end of the day, I kind of enjoyed it. Poison, look what the cat dragged in. This for me was a complete anti-metal album when it came out in the day. There was no way I was ever going to own it, but I came across someone on Discogs actually selling this and the follow-up album whose name I've forgotten and I don't think I've actually heard yet. I'm waiting for that pleasure, for £3 each. So I couldn't, and with the postage on top of that, I couldn't turn it down. It was a Music for Nations, and do you know what? I played it and I quite enjoyed it. What can I say? What I can say is there's the Music for Nations label, MFN69, and this is the first cover that I've noticed that has a barcode on it. So we're talking here, what, 1986? Barcodes were just coming into the UK by then. I remember looking at barcodes, certainly the one that was on Somewhere in Time, and I've just thought, why do they have to spoil album covers by putting that thing on? I didn't really understand what they were for. Although they had barcodes on them, a lot of point and sale terminals hadn't really come in yet, and it was still, most things still had price stickers on as well as barcodes. So I always hated the barcodes on albums, thought it just ruined the whole thing with the album cover. And now, of course, they're you barely notice them because they're so used to seeing them. So yeah, so this is the confusing thing is, so the barcodes appeared on here, but subsequent ones you'll see there's no barcode on them. So I'm not sure whether it was a prerequisite from Enigma Records that this was licensed under. I don't know, but there we go. An album I thought I'd never own and never enjoy, but I quite like it. Nothing wrong with it. Another band I didn't think I would own anything of, excuse me, but for Music for Nations. Now, there are 3 albums by this band on Music for Nations, and from the catalogue numbers, the order's a little bit wrong, so I'm only guessing that once they'd reached a certain status in the US, that Music for Nations decided to give a punt on them in the UK. I think this is their 3rd studio album, but the first one that got a release in the UK, and that's Striper, To Hell with the Devil. It's not clear to me whether this is a first or second pressing, because there are 2 versions listed on Discogs with different matrix numbers in the runout. I'm presuming this is a second pressing, as the other version goes for a few more. But the weird thing is I have the matrix numbers of one of them listed. So of the 2 listings, there's one has a matrix number and one has an alternative cover, and either Discogs is wrong or I've kind of got a bogus Frankenstein here, because I've got the cover of one and the record of the other. But you only notice those things if you get really anal about looking on Discogs. It's a gatefold with the lyrics on the inside. I always thought old Oz Fox here, he got the crappy end of the stick when it came to choosing costumes with this big thing sticking out of his chest. I noticed they kind of cover it up on here. Maybe he just didn't want it a close-up of it. And perhaps the worst heavy metal costume accessory ever, the Vickers dog collar. And I'm not knocking the Vickers dog collar at all. It's a valuable piece of a priest or Vickers part of their uniform, part of the clothes that they wear, but that is absolutely ridiculous. If anyone ever wonders why Striper didn't make it big in the UK, that is the reason why. The costumes that they wore. Heavy metal in the UK was born from sort of working classes. It was all denim and leather, and there was no way anyone could admit to kind of liking these guys, I think. And certainly where I grew up in Cardiff, which wasn't necessarily the prettiest neck of the woods, you just weren't going to go away if you admitted to liking a band that looked like this, regardless of how they sound. Now, I'm not the biggest Striper fan. I think they're a little bit, I call them Sunday school metal. They're not because they're preachy, but it's just, I just don't think the songs are great. And I know a lot of you are screaming at me now because you love them, and that's great. But there we go. It's a Music for Nations album. I have it, and I have listened to it a few times. It's not bad. I just think there's better stuff out there. Music for Nations 71, the singles album, over 100 minutes of the best in heavy metal. So, as usual, the compilations contain songs from Music for Nations albums that they have released, and you can see pictures of each of the bands here. I'll go through the listing in a minute, because I think it's always cool to hear what's on a Music for Nations compilation, but can you spot the odd man out here? Wasp, Blackie Lawless were not on the Music for Nations label. They only had one single that was ever released on Music for Nations, and that was Animal, Like a Beast. So Capitol Records bricked it. They would not release that single. So I think independent labels like Music for Nations knew it would be an absolute killer. They'd make a fortune on it. Take a single that's banned and market it, and goldmine. So it made it on this album. So that is the only Wasp song actually on any Music for Nations pressing. Obviously it was released as a single. I have that single, but it made it onto their singles album, because obviously all of these tracks on here were singles from their albums. We have Tank, Rocks, Virgin Steel, Metallica, Merciful Fate, Earthshaker, Alaska, Wasp, Loudness, Wendy O. Williams, Metallica again, Exciter, Rogue Mail, Q5, Alaska, Wasted, Rio, Eric Martin, Baby Taku, Legs Diamond, Rogue Mail again, Rio, and Agent Steel. And I don't know if it's going to focus so you can actually see the track listing, but there we go. And up in the top right, the Music for Nations symbol and MFN61. Ooh, this is going to be a long one. I apologise for that. No, I don't apologise for it. It's all good stuff. Inner sleeve and Music for Nations catalogue. And Inner Sleeves 2s is interesting because it shows some of the single covers of some of the records on here, and some that aren't actually. There's no Man of War on here. It still shows you one of their singles. And there's a great bio of Music for Nations on here, written by Malcolm Dome of Kerrang in 1986. A few more to go. Thank you for bearing with me if you're still here. I seem to be losing about 40 to 50 viewers each part I put one of these out, so it'll be interesting to see where this one ends up. But we're going to go back to Striper now for MFN72. Well, this is sort of Soldiers Under Command from 1985. So clearly, To Hell with the Devil probably did sell quite well for them to go back, unless they had a 3-album deal anyway. I'm not sure why this is a higher catalogue number. I'm guessing it's because, as I say, MFM only jumped on the Striper wagon after To Hell with the Devil came out. There's only one version of this UK pressing on Discogs, and that has a barcode, whereas my copy does not. So I'm assuming it's an earlier cover printing. I don't know. Another bit of information I need to track down at some point. And this is the famous Billy Harrison edition, denoted by the ballpoint pen writing down here, Billy Harrison, and also on the label as well. So clearly Billy Harrison was very, very protective of his Striper records back in the day, and wanted to make sure that the album cover and the record did not go too far away from each other. So Billy Harrison, if you're watching, I have your Striper record. What's next? Number 73, MFN73. We have the return of Hellion. They had an EP out a few years earlier, and then lots of contractual fallouts within the band. This is Screams in the Night. It's Music for Nations number 73. There's a picture of the band. Nothing particularly special about here. Again, no barcode, so as I say, we weren't particularly up on the technology in the UK at the time, which obviously kept me very happy. And here we have the inner sleeve with the thank yous and the credits and the lyrics. Number 74, MFN 74. We're back to Striper, and this time it's the yellow and black attack. Again, no barcode on here. And nothing to report on this one. I think this is as listed on Discogs, and no confusion over which pressing I have. Music Foundations, MFN64. 75 is Heathen, Breaking the Silence from 1987. That one may be a tough one to get, but on the wish list. 76 is Zoetrope, A Life of Crime. I think that's a thrash metal band. Again, it's one that I'm on the lookout for, but have yet to see that one in the wild or online for a decent price. MFN77 is this may well be one of the last thrash metal albums to appear on Music Foundations. Around 86-87 time, Music Foundations created a subsidiary label called Under One Flag, and a lot of the really good thrash, more sort of underground thrash, I guess, Nuclear Assault and what have you, were all licensed on that label rather than Music Foundations. So Music Foundations then concentrated more on heavy metal, hard rock, and AOR. But as heavy metal was kind of waning and thrash metal was taking off, it I think the quality of some of the releases tended to drop a bit, but there's still some good ones coming up in the final part of this series. So here we have Exodus, Pleasures of the Flesh. This is the last one I have in the 61 to 80 segment. Absolutely superb album. I love this one. Obviously it would be better if I had Bonded by Blood as well on Music Foundations, but this will do me and tide me over until I can find that baby. So the last three, number 78, are Tiger Tales, Young and Crazy. 79 is Michael Furlong, Breakaway. I've no rush to get that one. I've had a little sample of that one. It's kind of classic rock style, really not my thing. And MFN80 is Wild Dogs, Reign of Terror, which ironically has Michael Furlong on vocals and sounds really, really good, and that's one that I want. So there we have it. That's part 4. Part 5 will be up soon as I can listen to the albums and make some notes and have a good chat about them. I'll give you a chance to digest this one. Again, if you're still with me, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate everybody that watches these videos all the way through. If you have any comments, as always, type them below, and I'll respond to them all, and we'll have a chat about it. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.